Alright, so welcome to the Wet, Wild, and Warpy channel for this interview with Larry Oliver. Larry Oliver just recently went 5-0 with a Tyranids list at the Your Hobby Place GT. So, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Couple basic questions just to start off with so people can get a little background on you. How long you been playing? What armies do you play? And then if there's anything you want to expand on that, uh, teams you play for, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I've been playing Warhammer for 23 years. uh, right now, I play Tyranids almost exclusively, but I have and played Grey Knights, Tau, Orcs, Chaos at one point. I mean, I've basically played everything over
A
the
little of
course
this, a
of
little of that.
everything. Um, from like third edition to now,
Right.
and but yeah, right now I'm almost entirely Tyranids. I really love playing Tyranids. I started playing Tyranids because I wanted a kind of a cannon fodder army to play with my friends because they all got tired of my other armies, and then they ended up being pretty good. So just keep going at it. And I really love the paint scheme. So I picked a paint scheme that I could do easily over a whole lot of bugs. So
Yeah,
it stuck.
that is not something I have been able to do with my armies yet. So far, I think I've repainted every model in my army 4 times. I have to stop. I have
Uh
to
huh.
stop. Anyway,
Yep.
so when you strolled up to the GT this last weekend, were you prepared to go 5-0, 4-1? What were your expectations for the weekend?
I mean, I wanted to go 5-0. I I have been waiting for our ninth edition codex for a while, and I've gone through the struggle years of Tyranids through the end of eighth and then the beginning of ninth and all this stuff. And so going into the tournament, I had some practice games under my belt for the new codex. Before the codex even came out, and I played against you, in
Yep,
fact. Um,
they were good games.
yeah. So I experimented. I learned a few things about the units that I don't like and units I do like. Last minute made two harpies and painted them uh, for this tournament. So I was feeling pretty confident, and I looked at some of the other Tyranid lists, and a lot of us have similar things in our
Similar
list. So I'm like,
designs.
yeah. So I was like, okay, I must be doing something right. Then if TJ's bringing the same thing basically, and JC,
Alright, so let's start to actually get into what we're all here for, and that is the list that won, right? That's why people are going to be interested, so let's get started. Why Leviathan? That's the first thing we see. Hive Fleet,
sure.
Leviathan, why?
Well, Transnid, of course. So
Yes,
um,
the soon to be infamous Transnid.
Transnid, and also the psychic power. The psychic power is very powerful. It allows you to pick a synaptic imperative and give it to one of your units. The synaptic imperatives is what enables the Maliceptor to do an action and cast powers.
Okay, so that's part of the combo that I'm
That,
sure we are going to get into in a little
yes.
bit. Because
But you can also do like you can give one of your monsters or harpy 4-up invulnerable for a turn. You can give one of your units of warriors a 5-up invulnerable for a turn. You can give your flying hive tyrant exploding sixes in melee for a turn with the psychic power. So it's got a lot of utility, beyond just the combo.
alright,
And then every synapse creature is full transhuman with 4-up, and then non-synapse is 3-up.
which I mean the non-synapse, especially as we go through the list, we're gonna see that most of your stuff A is synapse, if I'm not
Yeah,
incorrect, and
most of
B,
it. Yeah,
it's incredibly tough anyway. Um,
yeah. There's nothing in the list that's less than toughness 5,
right. So I don't.
unless you count spore mines.
The transhuman 4-up is really I think what's big as far as the Leviathan for this list. It might be different for like a big Nids list if someone decided to run a lot of little bugs, but as far as this is probably the synapse portion is what we really care about.
Yeah,
So the first unit that you have in here is a unit of Zoanthropes. It is a no force orc slot.
Yes, because if you take a Neurothrope, you can take a Zoanthrope unit as a non-force work slot, so it
Well,
doesn't take up elites.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Especially since the zoanthropes supposedly can deal some damage.
Yes,
Let's go ahead
it's
and
especially nice if you're doing a double patrol
yeah.
because patrols only have 2 elite slots, and the elite category is very popular in the Tyranid Codex right now.
Um,
Uh,
so and
so
then
yes, the Zone Therps.
tell me about them.
Yeah, the Zone Therps, they give you +1 to cast Witchfire powers for each Zone Therp in the unit, and then you also do an additional mortal wounds for each Zone Therp in the unit, up to 3 for Smite. So your Smite is going okay, +3 to cast, and then +3 mortal wounds on the Smite
So it
every
gives you a
time.
pretty good chance of the super smite, and then once you
Yes.
get the super smite, it gives you 3 on top of that.
Yeah, so you're doing D6 +3 mortals. And actually, on the stream in the tournament, I did 9 mortals to Mark's unit
Yeah,
that was on one of the objectives and completely wiped the unit out.
I mean just the sheer number of mortals we're gonna see throughout this list is ridiculous. The sheer number of
Yeah,
mortal wounds that you can pop out is ridiculous, and it's one of the things that's gonna make this Tyranid book kind of survive a little bit longer than some of the other ones. All right.
yeah.
So we move on to the Neurothrope, who is your warlord. Uh, what's the Neurothrope do?
The Neurothrope, he's an HQ. He has +1 to cast innately, and then you give him Resonance Barb, so he gets another +1 to cast. He knows an additional power, so he knows 3 powers on top of the Leviathan Hive Nixus. Um, and all of the Tyranid psychic powers can be cast through Synaptic Link. So he could just be sitting in the back, just be like, all right, I'm going to use Onslaught on the Hive Tyrant halfway across the board and just chain it through Synapse and be completely out of range of Deny the Witch and be +2 to cast while
And
doing it.
and because, as we said before, most of the things in your army are synapse, it really helps in creating that web to get those powers
Yeah.
wherever you need them, right?
Yeah, it's easy to do that. Oh, and then he has his ability, which is in my command phase, you pick a psychic unit to get 3d6 and discard a die for the psychic test. And his warlord trait allows him to do that twice. So he's always giving it to himself, and he's giving it to usually the Maliceptor. So they're
That
both rolling 3d6
it's even better that
for
you can do it twice. Like
yeah.
once is good,
So
but
like he's rolling 3d6 and getting +2 to every single cast. He never fails his cast.
right.
So you give him all the important powers. You give him onslaught, which is allows you to advance and charge. You don't want that to fail because you've already advanced by the time you're casting it. And then catalyst for Field of Pain, paroxysm to turn off Overwatch, and to give -1 to wound and melee to whatever unit you cast it on.
All right.
Yeah, and then he can do Hive Nexus if you want him to. It's a 7 warp charge to do that one, so sometimes you want him to do it.
So far, what I'm hearing is that Nids are basically beating out everybody else in the psychic phase.
Yes, I have not tried fighting Thousand Suns yet, but I feel pretty confident that we could, go toe to toe with Thousand Suns on Mortal Wounds in the Psychic phase.
That'd be an interesting matchup. We'll have to see if we
Yeah,
can't make that happen. All right, so that's a Neurothrope. I'm sure we're going to talk about him a little bit more when we get down to the Maliceptor, but let's keep going and move on to the Winged Hive Tyrant for now. What's he doing? What's his job in your list?
this is the Reaper Tyrant. Reaper Tyrant is in almost every single Tyranid list out there right now.
Okay.
And what it is, it's a Hive Tyrant. It's a flying Hive Tyrant with a Bone Sword Lash Whip. The Bone Sword now is +3 to Strength, so its base Strength is 10. And then AP 3, no, AP 4, damage 3. So that's the basic weapon that a Hive Tyrant can have. And
Wait,
then you
you
make
said
it.
the basic weapon.
That is the basic weapon that every Hive Tyrant's going to have
Strength
because
10,
it's.
-4, 3 damage. That's the basic weapon. That's
Yeah, they just
fantastic.
they come with it. It's free. Oh, and they real ones to hit with it because that's what the whip does. Um,
All right.
and then you take the Reaper of Obliteratrix or Obliterax or whatever it's called. That's
All
the
right.
relic, and what it does is it's not specific to the bone sword. Like it doesn't change the profile on the bone sword, but what it does do is make it so that every successful wound causes a mortal wound in addition to the normal damage.
Okay.
And the damage from the weapon cannot be prevented. So you can't do feel no pain. You can't if you are a Satan, that where you normally can only take 3 wounds per phase, ignores that. You could just kill it.
So what you're saying is, there's once he hits you, there's not a lot you can do about it.
Right. The only thing that does still work is minus damage. So if you have -1 damage, that does still apply because it applies it to the damage characteristic of the weapon and doesn't like prevent the wound from happening.
And then if he gets into a cheeky spot because you didn't make your charge,
Oh
um,
yeah. So then there's Encircle the Prey, which is a stratagem that it might get nerfed. We're not sure, but it's only has 1 command point, and you can pick a unit that has fly or a unit that has like tunnel order or something like that. It's basically Raveners and Trigons, and that unit can go back into reserves or just go into reserves, and then pop up in your next reinforcement step.
so that
So you go send this flyer in as a little missile. He goes, hits something. You know, they can fight back if this thing is still alive, and then 1 CP goes back in orbit, and then your opponent just can't touch it.
until it arrives
Uh,
next time to do it again.
right. Now, when he arrives back, you know, you got a 9-inch charge, so what you're probably going to do is, like, he's going to arrive way in the back again, and just wait till next turn to go and nuke something. At least that's what I usually do. And he can arrive back in range of the Tyrant Guard to give him lookout, sir. Um, yeah, that's what. That's so. Oh, and there's another thing about Encircle the Prey. Um, it's at the end of the player turn, which means you can do scoring stuff before you do it. Because at the active player, you get to choose what the order is. So you could go, okay, he's scoring me engaging off fronts, and he's got that objective for whatever like secondary you're doing, and then he goes back in orbit.
Just to
And
make it more convenient for
and
you, right?
and this part though, the TO here at the tournament did not allow this, but technically, by rules as written, you can do it multiple times in a turn because it's not in a phase. It's at the end of the turn. Stratagems are only limited to once per phase.
Yeah. So
So
you'll probably want to check with the TOs on that one.
yeah.
People are
So
gonna
like you
rule
could
one way or the
go
other.
because like people online are going, okay, flying my 2 harpies over, shooting stuff, and then they both go in orbit,
And then they come
and
back.
that's clearly not intended.
No.
So we're not playing it that way. But I expect it might get nerfed in some way, like maybe add a limitation that if you're in an engagement range with an enemy unit, you can't do it. Because right now, even if you're stuck in combat, you can just disappear
Yeah. Although there
with
there,
no penalty.
there have been some stratagems in the past that have let you do that, but most of those happen in the movement phase, not at the end of your turn, right?
Right.
So it means you have to essentially get into combat in your opponent's phase and then disappear.
Yeah.
Um, but
So that Flying Hive Tyrant, the Reaper one, almost everyone also gives it Adaptive Biology, which gives it a Violet Feel No Pain.
okay.
So you don't have to cast Catalyst on it. It just has it.
So it's tough, and it kills everything it touches, and
Yep. And then it has Adrenal Gland, so it has a 17-inch move instead of 16-inch, and it gets +1 strength, which doesn't matter.
and then
But
let's make sure no one's forgotten that it has transnids, which means
yeah.
it can be wounded on
So
better
yes,
than a 4.
it's toughness 7, so the Transnid comes in a lot
Yep.
versus high strength weapons. So
All right. So then
yeah,
we move on to your troop slot. We're seeing Tyranid warriors here. Dual bone swords on most, death spitters, and then a lash whip and a bone sword. Um,
yeah,
is there a reason the one guy has the lash whip?
yeah. It theoretically, like what it does is it gives the unit the Lash Whip keyword, and there's a stratagem where you can go, okay, in your opponent's morale phase, if you're in engagement range with this Lash Whip thing, 1 CP gives them -2 leadership and -1 attrition. Then you stack that with the psychic power of the horror, which is the same thing, so you get -4 leadership and -2 to attrition. It was it doesn't cost you much to do it. Like it literally costs 0 points, and all it really is costing you is 1 attack. But you get to reroll ones for that one guy anyway.
Okay.
So it's not really costing you much damage output to just have this keyword. In the future, though, I'm just not even going to bother. It never came up,
Okay.
and
I mean,
it's
I
because
can
it costs a command point. It's just
right.
not worth doing.
I mean, I think I can come up with a couple specific scenarios where you'd probably want to use that, but I think
Yeah,
that the army has such good ways of getting around tough, good invulnerable save models that it's not. I don't know, is
yeah,
relying on the morale phases really where the
yeah.
army sits.
Now the horror is fine to be on like a Flyrant or something and just use it whenever the opportunity presents itself because it doesn't cost you anything to cast a psychic
Yeah.
power, But the one CP cost is just too stiff of a price for me to ever use that ability.
Yeah. Because there are, I'm sure there are several things, several stratagems in this book that you want to use um, every turn,
Yeah, yeah.
or if
I
not
can
every
circle the
turn,
prey.
as frequently as you can.
And so my warrior units are in units of 5. Units of 5 is a nice number because it avoids the blast weapon, the blast rule.
Hmm.
Unit coherency is nice at
Yep.
5, and it also just makes them really tough to kill units. Um, and they do a decent amount of damage. I mean, they're strength 8 in melee because of adrenal glands and bone swords. Um,
Strength 8 troops.
strength 8 troops, yeah,
That's
they got a
absolutely
huge
fantastic.
upgrade there with
Transhuman
four
strength 8 troops. I love it.
with four attacks each. 3 up to hit, strength 8. Then get real ones from the Hive Tyrant, giving them core ability, and AP 2 damage 2. Uh, there's also a stratagem with a Leviathan where you can give an additional AP in melee if there are 2 units in melee with the thing that you're hitting. That didn't come up, but I need to remember that for all this Armor of Contempt going around.
Yep. The Armor of Contempt is kind of setting the meta almost.
Yeah.
Almost. And then, so, any other major stratagems that you use on these guys? Anything that comes in key? Um,
They have a -1 damage stratagem. I didn't use it, I don't think, at all in the whole tournament. Most of the time when someone decided to hit them, it was either going to be a total wipe anyway, or just not worth using the stratagem.
that's fair.
Other than that, I don't think there's really anything stratagem wise you use on them. You just they're there for objectives and they're there to kill stuff.
So we're
And of
coming.
course, and the death
Okay.
spitters are pretty nice too. So
Yeah. What's the
yeah,
profile?
strength assault 3, strength 5, AP 2, damage 1.
Yeah. I mean
Um,
that's pretty solid.
24-inch range, and it's assault, so you can advance with it and still use it. So
Yeah, that's a solid profile, especially in a T4 T5 meta right now. You're at least
yeah.
wounding on fours, generally wounding on threes. Um,
Hmm.
so this model may be my least favorite model, the one we're about to get to, and that's the Death Leaper.
Oh no.
Please tell me about this.
He has so many rules. He's just a big box of special rules. Um, my favorite is probably the one where he turns off stratagems in melee. So if he's in engagement range of an enemy unit, your opponent cannot use stratagems that affect that unit or that target that unit or involve that unit in any way.
So
They just cannot benefit from stratagems.
that's not during combat. That's not during the combat phase. That's just if you're in engagement
If
range.
you're
Period.
correct, correct,
Well, that's annoying.
yeah. And then he also has an aura, a 6-inch aura that turns off actions. So units cannot start actions with a 6 inch, which I thought was never going to come up, but it actually came up in my last game. It was really funny. It was a it's a mirror match. My opponent had the parasite of Mortrix or whatever it's called,
The one that
and he gave it
spawns the little
rippers.
swarm.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep. And he gave it the relic gestation sac, which allows him to, in the shooting phase, do an action to spawn ripper swarms. Um, And of course, he also has Alien Cunning. I use Alien Cunning on Death Leaper. That's a warlord trait that makes him count as OBSEC and count as 5 models. So they both. I was already on an objective. He runs over with Parasite on the objective, and he's like, "Okay, we're contesting. Oh, but now I'm going to use Gestation Sack and drop these Ripper Swarms on the objective." And I'm like, "Oh no, you're not actually. You're within 6 inches of Death Leaper. You can't use Gestation Sack." And we were both like, "Oh yeah." That's a rule Death Leaper has, isn't it? Like, yeah.
Like I
It
said,
was
this model is just and he drives me up a wall. It's headaches
yeah.
dealing with him because like okay, I'm gonna kill him this time with this troop unit because he's way in the back. He came out of my backfield because you can't stop him because he has a 50 millimeter base or something like that. Um,
Yeah, so
and
the other rules he has, um he's -1 to hit all the time. Doesn't matter where he is. If he's benefiting from cover, then he cannot be targeted outside 12 inches. So even like if there's no one around him, as long as he's in terrain, he just can't be targeted. And then oh, there's one other thing. Just top of my head, I can't remember exactly what it was. There we go. I gave him Alien Cunning, so he has OBSEC.
that's
Uh,
just super annoying in
oh
your
yeah, he has a
list.
4-up invulnerable. Right. So he has a 4-up invulnerable. He's toughness 5. He's not synapse, so he doesn't get transited.
Okay.
But he's 7 wounds, which is so many more than he used to.
Yeah,
And this guy's 90. And this guy's 95 points.
that's phenomenal. The number of special rules that and how good those special rules are. It's not like it's just oh he has special rules to have special rules. Almost every single one of those special rules
Hmm.
plays into a
Oh,
gun in a pretty big way.
he also has a built-in fight first, um, which by the way I kind of comboed with Venom Thropes because Venom Thropes have an ability where you just pick a unit within 3 inches in the fight phase, and on a 3-up they fight last. So if you heroically intervene with the Death Leaper, make the unit fight last. Now they fight normal. Now Death Leaper is going to be fighting before them,
Right.
plus another unit.
Plus you can't interrupt with that unit
Right.
because
And they cannot interrupt because
Death
he's
Leaper.
got a strat.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
You can get away if you're charging, but
So that's the Death Leaper. He's absolutely phenomenal. If you don't have one, get one.
he's just fun.
Um, so next up is Pyrovores, and I hear you're thinking about putting more Pyrovores in.
Yeah. They're just incredibly efficient profile for 30 points. Um, they have 5 wounds at 30 points. So you think about it, that's 6 points per wound.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
there's not a lot of models that are 6 points per wound.
That's like cultist points.
Right, but then it's a toughness 5 model with a 3-up armor save.
That is not cultist
Like, okay.
stats.
They have 5 wounds each, so that's a really high number of
Yeah,
wounds for a model that's not like a character. Um, there's damage 3 weapons, there's damage 4 weapons, but there's rarely any just damage 5 weapons.
I
Like
mean I
there's
can
D6 plus
yeah
twos maybe, but
I can think of one damage 5 weapon, and we haven't
yeah, and
gotten
it's on
to
my
it yet.
list. Yeah,
We're going to.
uh,
Don't worry.
yeah. So he's got 3-up armor, but then he's got a flamer. The flamer has 2 different profiles. It's got 18-inch range, 2d6 shots, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1, or the 12-inch one, which is strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, d6 shots. Um, they're both assaults, so he can advance. He's only got a 5-inch move, but he can advance and shoot. And you can get a unit of 3 of them for 90 points. So
So you
that's
shoot
what I
66 shots
up to
or
66 at
3
18
dis. Yep.
inches, 3d6 at 12 inches, 2 damage, 1 damage.
Yeah.
So
That sounds like the
yeah,
Chronos, but much much cheaper.
yeah, and it's a flamer, so it auto hits,
Yep.
and
So it doesn't matter that you advanced.
yeah. So typically, if I know I'm going against a melee-oriented army that's going to be really fast, I just use these guys to screen everything.
Yep.
Just like, yeah, okay.
That's a
Charge
good idea.
them. They're cheap. They'll die. I don't care. I can overwatch you if you don't stop me.
And that Overwatch
All
is
right.
gonna hurt.
Yeah.
All right. So
And
next
then,
up is something you
yeah.
have two of in your list. And that's the Harpy.
Oh, yeah, the harpies.
Why are there
The
two? What do they do? And why are they annoying?
I kind of look at them as flying ravagers, double ravagers almost. So first of all, they're aircraft. They have all the aircraft things,
Hmm.
including the ability to hover. But they have the gyrocopter ability where they can turn mid-flight. So they can do a 90-degree turn before they move, and then while they're moving, do another 90-degree turn. So that's very mobile.
I mean, they should be,
They only have
right? They're basically large bats.
yeah. They have the shortest movement of any aircraft that I know of. So it's a 40-inch movement,
Okay.
which normally you think aircraft they have the whole board, but 40
Hmm.
inches doesn't get you the whole board. Um, but they're bombs. They have really good bombs.
So they
It's
are the
up to
bomb.
they are the bomb. They drop spore mines. So if you fly over an enemy unit, you can pick that unit and roll a die for each model in the unit up to 10,
All right.
and for every 4 up, it does a mortal.
That's pretty good.
If you instead pick a unit with vehicles or monsters, it's roll 66 per vehicle or monster in the unit. So if there's just two, vehicles in the unit, you're rolling maximum 10 dice,
So
which is really good.
wait, hold up.
It's 66 per monster and vehicle.
I thought I misheard you. I did not mishear you. Uh, so yeah, you only need two monsters or vehicles in a unit, and then you just get max dice.
You get 10 dice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So that's wrong.
you're looking at average 5 mortals doing that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of vehicle squadrons out there,
Yeah.
so comes in handy.
Um,
Um, and if you don't fly over any models, you can choose to drop 3 spore mines on the table.
all right, and that's once
Those
per game,
spore
right?
mines. No, it's every turn. Every turn you can do this.
No,
Yeah,
that's
at
fantastic.
170 points for this model.
170 points for
Yeah,
if it lives,
and
5 bombs, dealing mortal wounds every turn, annoying your opponents, a ton of mobility on the table.
then he's got guns. Um, he's got 2 heavy venom cannons. A heavy venom cannon is heavy 3, strength 9, AP 3, damage 4.
We could have stopped at the
Uh,
bomb.
yeah, so he's got 2 of those. He's got 6 shots,
So six
hitting on
shots
threes,
at four
strength 9,
damage.
AP 3, 4 damage.
That
Yeah,
means that even the Terminators or whatever that reduce damage by 1 are still dying for
yeah,
everyone that gets through. That's absolutely
yeah.
phenomenal. And then who cares about Armor of Contempt when you blasting AP 4? You said or 3?
AP 3,
Okay.
3.
All right.
Uh,
So they're
yep.
good.
And they have 13 wounds, 3 up armor, toughness 7.
And then you said
Uh,
you could give them some upgrades.
yeah. So I pay 10 points to give one of them synapse, so that one has transnid. The other one can get transnid for 1 CP, so they
Okay.
both could get transnid. And then if you activate the Zoanthrope Synaptic Link, they get 4 up invulnerables because of the synapse.
So
So
any turn that you're concerned about them, you pop that 4
yeah,
up invulnerable. Probably turn 1 if you're worried about getting alpha striked, right?
usually, yeah,
All right. So that was your first patrol.
yeah.
I'm assuming we're gonna see some of the same things in your second patrol, but probably some more. All right, so we have another no force org slot, but this
Yeah.
one is not for Zoanthropes. This one's for Tyrant Guard. What are your Tyrant Guard doing, and why are they doing it? And why are they
Tyrant
here?
Guard, they give funny, like in the codex, they did something completely different, and now with the data slate thing right before the codex came out, they just give Lookout Sir to the Hive Tyrants.
Okay.
If you're within 3 inches, the Hive Tyrant benefits from Lookout Sir, and it works just like any other Lookout Sir, but
Okay.
with a 12 wound model.
And
Um,
are they infantry or are they monsters?
they are infantry.
Okay.
They are toughness 6 with 4 wounds and a 2 up armor.
Because
Um,
that's infantry.
yeah, and then they have 3 attacks each with rending claws, which are strength 6, AP 4, 1 damage.
Okay.
Or I also gave them the lash and sword, so the sword is 2 damage, but it's only AP 1.
Okay.
So it's situational
Right.
weapons, and they can reroll ones. I gave them
Um,
adrenal glands because 15 points I had spare, and it gives them an extra inch of movement.
help
Um,
help them keep up with the winged tyrants that are.
yeah, basically just to get them into a good position so that the hive tyrants can do their thing.
So and then we move on to the winged hive tyrant that is, as far as I know, or one of the only models with the damage, just flat damage 5.
Yes.
How did you
So
get that flat damage 5? Is the question.
so a lot of people are opting go with this relic on a walking hive tyrant. It's called the shard gullet. Um, I chose to put it on a winged hive tyrant because I love the mobility.
Hmm.
When you have a gun like that, you want to make sure you can get good use out of it. And if you're on a walking hive tyrant, your opponents can hide from it pretty easily. But you're not going to be able to hide from a 16-inch movement flying hive tyrant that has these massive wings that could just peek around the sides of buildings. Like,
It's a very similar problem that people have trying to get out of line of sight of Ravagers or the Dark Eldar Fire Prisms. I mean, not Dark Eldar,
right?
Craftworld Fire Prisms, or and really anything that has like 14, 15, 16-inch movement plus long range guns.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, like you're going out there and you're doing this to get like an angle on something, and he's out there, he's exposed, but then you use encircle the prey and he goes back in orbit.
Right, if you're concerned about him. It
Yeah.
means
Yeah,
you have zero concerns about the placement, so
correct.
long
You
as he's
just
the
go
only
all
one.
in.
Yeah, so long as he's the only one you would have
Yeah.
concerns about.
Yeah, I don't typically like most of my games. I didn't send the Reaper Flaren in until turn 2 or 3. So turn 1, this guy goes out, does his shooting, and then he goes disappears. So Shard Gullet is an artifact or a relic that replaces the heavy venom cannon, and it's assault 3 instead of heavy 3. That's big because you can advance with this guy and still shoot it.
Yep.
Um, and it's strength 12, AP 5, damage 5. So
Does it also ignore invulnerable saves? That's so
no, but
scary.
anything that doesn't have an invulnerable save, it can just delete.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Um,
that is a scary profile. Um, strength. You say strength 12 minus 5
strength 12.
damage.
Yep.
That's phenomenal.
Yep.
So and then you
He hits
gave
on
him
twos. For warlord trait, I didn't give him a warlord trait.
no, but you gave him psychic scream and the horror. So we've
Yeah.
kind of touched on what the horror does with the leadership and the attrition tests. What does psychic scream do?
It's basically smite.
Okay.
It's an 18-inch, but it doesn't need line of sight. So nearest enemy unit within 18 inches doesn't need line of sight. They take D3 mortal wounds,
Okay.
and that's basically it.
So it's just a good spell to have. Well, a good
Yeah.
psychic
It
ability.
can also, if it hits a psyker, like it does some extra stuff that never comes up. So
So then we have two more units of warriors. Are these copy paste?
yeah, same ones.
All right. So if you're
Unit
wondering about
5.
those, go ahead and look at the earlier portion of this video. All right. So moving on to uh, what one, what some may consider a big bad. I
The
I
brain bug.
I definitely think that he's a powerhouse on the table and should be um, respected at minimum.
Yeah,
So you want to tell us about the Maliceptor? What does he do? 470 points.
the Maliceptor. So the big thing about him is he's got this ability that where whenever he casts a psychic power or psychic action and he gets a 7 or higher, he does 3 mortal wounds to the nearest enemy unit within 12 inches. Does not need line of sight for that. Um, so that's the main ability where he's going to be doing most of his damage.
All right.
It's only 12 inches though. He only has an 8-inch move, so he can advance and do this.
Mm-hmm.
So like he doesn't usually get to do it on turn 1 unless your opponent comes to you. Typically, he's going to be hiding and waiting for the target opportunity or someone to come out, and then he goes and just nukes him. Because, so I mentioned earlier, Hive Nexus allows me to pick a synaptic link and give it to him.
Yep.
His own synaptic link is he can use a psychic action and still cast all of his powers. So, what I typically do is I give him 3d6 to cast from the Neurothrop.
Yep.
You roll 3d6 and you cast Hive Nexus on himself and gets a 7 or higher, does 3 mortal wounds, and then he casts Smite. He casts Neuroparasite, which is another psychic power that does mortal wounds. So that's 3 casts, and you use a CP so he can cast a third power because normally he
Yep.
can only cast 2. And then he does a psychic action if he gets 7 or higher on that. So that's total of 12 mortal wounds plus whatever Smite does, whatever Neuroparasite does.
And it's not higher than a 7. It's 7 or higher
Correct.
on 3d6.
And on 3d6, choose 2. And he can get +1 to cast from the Neurothrope's synaptic link if that's active for the turn. So
So it's
yeah, he's pretty
decent.
good. hmm
Um,
Yeah, with that +1 to cast, I think it's like something like a 70% or higher chance to roll 7 or higher.
Definitely low. Um, the odds are low.
Yeah,
And then if you really wanted to, you could just CP reroll it.
yeah.
Um,
So he just picks up units. Like
are there really?
anything that comes into my army, like tries to melee me,
Yep.
I'm like, all right, that's gonna die to the Maliceptor, and moving on over here. Like,
So does he have any other good abilities? Good
no, that's
combat?
it.
That's it.
His combat's mediocre. He can do 3 big attacks or 6 little attacks. I think he did actually kill a troop master at one point. He did. His big attacks are do 3d3 damage, but there's only 3 of them. But you just need one to get through, and you can kill a character.
You only need one.
So,
Um, so he's a one-trick pony, but that one trick is very good.
and he's thick. He's 15 wounds, toughness 8, and a 3 up armor and a 4 up invulnerable. And he's synapse, so he's transnid.
All right. That's
So
that's
you give him catalyst for fight feeling pain, and he's just a really
it's like
pain. He's a pain in the butt to kill.
it's like 11 points a wound with a 4 up invuln. It just dishes out damage. It's higher than 11. It's like 13 or
Yeah.
15 or something. But anyway, so
So
yeah,
in
he's good.
almost every game, I had to like cradle this guy and just make sure nothing touched him, and
Right.
like the entire rest of the army was like supporting him,
Okay.
and then he just kills things.
Um, and then speaking of protecting him, I believe the Venom Thropes are
Venom.
there to do that job.
I mean, somewhat, yeah. They give him -1 to be hit. They give
Alright.
everything -1 to be hit. But I think what I found about the Venethropes that was more valuable than the -1 to hit was the fight last. Like, I didn't think about it when I was putting them in the list because I'm like, oh, -1 to hit's so good. But their other ability is really strong. It's called Toxic Miasma. At the start of the fight phase, you select one enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit. They don't have to be in engagement range, just
That's
3 inches.
fantastic.
Roll 1d6 on a 3 plus. That unit suffers one mortal wound and is not eligible to fight this phase until all other eligible units have in the army have
Okay.
done so.
So it does require a 3 plus, but that's still 66%.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty good.
it's it was fantastic. Like, I told my opponents whenever they are coming in from melee, I'm like, by the way, I have the ability to fight last on a 3 up with this unit. So that forced them to like play around them or
Hmm.
just go into them. And
It's something you have to do. Either you just take it,
yeah,
right?
because
Or
the last thing you want is for your expensive melee unit to charge in, focusing on a target, and then just get told no, you're fighting last, and then they get killed before they do anything.
yeah.
Like
But that's why Fight
it's a
Last is so
huge,
good,
it's really good.
is because it lets you go, hey, I know you thought you were going to do good,
Yeah.
but you're 200 plus points of nothing this game. All right, so that's everything in the list. What's staying? What's leaving? Where does the list evolve from here? What
Well, believe
fails
it
to
or
do its
not,
job?
I think I am taking out the Death Leaper.
All right.
Um, he was fun, but he just doesn't do enough damage. I mean, he's got 7. It sounds good on paper. 7 attacks, 2 up to hit, strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage.
That does sound good.
It sounds good, but then when you're looking at 7 attacks and then you got a wound, you get a hit, you get down to like sometimes only 4 getting through,
Yep.
depending on what you're hitting. And then they get invulnerables, and you're like, okay, I just did 4 damage. Well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
For 95
um,
points, there's I mean,
yeah,
95
I
points
mean
is pretty
his
cheap, but
so his main role in the army was OBSEC. He's alien cunning, which gives him counts as 5 models, and he's OBSEC. I can do that with other things.
Alright,
Like I don't need to do with him. So I'm taking him out, and I'm putting alien cunning on the shard gullet hive tyrant,
okay.
who currently doesn't have a roller trait. And I figured, well, if he's going to be sniping stuff anyway,
Might as well put him on an
sometimes not
objective.
even just get him on an objective and be OPSEC. So that's the first change I'm doing. removing him. I'm adding another Pyrovore. Um, Also, the Harpies were not actually that impressive. Like they look great on paper, but performance-wise, they didn't do a whole lot.
No.
Um, yeah. So against Gene Steel Cult, my first game was against Gene Steel Cult. They did okay there. Like he couldn't interact with them much at all, but
Right.
it's just a whole bunch of troops, and 6 shots isn't great at killing troops. They do have an 8 shot gun as well, but I actually forgot about that the whole weekend.
Wait, so they have the six shotgun and
Yeah, they
9 shotgun,
they have
or
a Stinger Salvo. It's Assault 8, Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1. I completely forgot about that the entire weekend. uh,
all right, we're just gonna skip over that. We're
yeah,
gonna
we'll just skip over
yeah,
that.
we're gonna ignore that part.
Uh,
Uh,
so yeah, against Harlequins, they do almost nothing because Harlequins make you hit on fours,
mhm,
and that's only 6 shots, like I said. So it just cuts all your damage output in half. The bombs like do okay, but then Harlequins can just delete them
yeah.
after you drop your one bomb, and then it's like okay. Space Marines don't care too much about them. Like they care about the bombs, but again, they could just delete them the next turn.
Mhm.
That's what happened against Mark. All the missiles just took him out. Okay, it's just I don't think they do enough damage on one turn
Okay.
to warrant their cost if they're going to get killed. And then Eldar, they're able to kill these guys pretty quick, but they do a lot of damage against Eldar as well. So I'm
Interesting.
leaving one in the list.
Okay.
So I'm putting one in. I'm giving it Dermic Symbiosis to give it a 4-pin vulnerable all the time.
Yep.
Um, but then instead, I'm going to add 30 gargoyles. 3 units of 10 gargoyles, which is
You,
what I'm painting right now.
you can do a lot with 30 gargoyles. I mean, that's
Yeah, uh,
move blocking,
some of
obsec.
a lot of the other Tyranid players were taking them, and I saw them in action. I'm like, you know what? That is really useful. It's their OBSEC. They have a 12-inch move with fly. They could just play the stranglehold game, steal stuff. They can encircle the prey, so you can go, okay, I need stranglehold this turn. I'm going to move them out there, take this thing, and then just pop back in orbit,
Yeah, that's good.
and then come back later.
Just to be
Uh,
annoying.
just be like, oh, yeah, I'm taking stranglehold, but I'm not trading a unit to do it.
Yeah, and
um,
that, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of trading up.
yeah. They have decent little guns. They're strength 5, AP 1, strength 5, AP 1, damage 1.
All right.
Um,
All right.
they're
So,
only 4 up to hit, but
is there anything about the list we didn't cover? Anything that you went up against that was like, hey, I had a real problem with this that other Tyranid players should know about? Um, are we missing anything about this list?
um, let's see. So I did have problems with screening, which is another reason I'm adding gargoyles.
All right.
Because I went up against Gene Steel Cult, and they can show up anywhere. So I was really struggling to make sure I space out my units and have enough space to protect like the Maleceptor and everything
Right.
I need to protect. What I wanted to do that game was basically move into the middle and just make a big circle with all the objectives and just be like, all right, arrive wherever you want. I don't care. I'm gonna delete whatever comes in.
Right.
But I had to instead do it in like a corner and risk my Hive Tyrants holding the objective in the middle. Um, it worked out, but it felt like that could have been a better game if I had
Okay.
more units to screen. Excuse
Right.
me. What else did I have? So that guy by Gene Steer Cult list, he went on to place third.
Oh,
Um, with
so
pure Gene Steer Cult.
so
So
you
it
played the
was a pretty
guy
cool.
who came in
I played the
third,
guy. I
and the
played the
guy
guy
who
who
came
came in third, in
fifth,
fifth, and in seventh.
and in seventh.
I was their only losses. Yeah.
So you knocked a couple people out of the 5-0 bracket, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I did.
Thank you very much for coming on. If there's any shout outs you want to do, go ahead and do them. And we will see you guys. Uh, so we have another interview coming up on Monday. if you watch this before then. If you don't watch this before then, I'm gonna add a link over there somewhere so that you can click on it. Uh, Shoutouts?
Nah. Shout out to you, Jason. Thanks for being there and doing
Woo!
the commentary. That was cool.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next time.